Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Glor. They've been trading missile fire for 20 days now. Today, they were also trading ceasefire proposals with no success. New smoke rose over Gaza City today. Israel's response after they said Hamas fired a barrage of rockets this morning. There was hope a 12-hour lull in the fighting yesterday might be extended. That hope ended as others have violently. We have new details this evening, plus more of Charlie Rose's interview with a leader of Hamas. We start with Don Dahler in Tel Aviv.
The words ceasefire ceased to have clear meaning today. 10 minutes after the humanitarian truce expired this morning, Hamas rocket launchers roared to life. The IDF says this video shows rockets being fired from a school in Gaza. Even as the explosive projectiles were flying, Israel proposed another brief ceasefire of 24 hours, which Hamas rejected, only to propose their own hours later. On CBS News Face the Nation, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu explained why Israel was suspicious.
Now they floated a ceasefire proposal, and you know what? This is quite astounding, Bob. They violated their own ceasefire, and they're firing at us as we speak. So Israel is not obliged and will not let a terrorist organization, a ruthless terror organization committed to our destruction, to decide when it's convenient for them to stop for a moment, rearm, and continuing firing on our citizens.
International pressure to stop the fighting continues to build. President Obama called Netanyahu to personally urge him to find a way to peace. Israel's Defense Force has been working through ceasefire and machine gun fire to destroy the network of tunnels it sees as the greatest threat to the nation's security. There is hope that goal can be accomplished within the next few days. And today, in response to outrage over the killing of 15 civilians, mostly children, in a UN-operated school last Thursday, the IDF released this video. It says it shows a single mortar shell exploding in the school's empty courtyard. According to Israel, this proves it wasn't their fault, and they blame Hamas. But it contradicts eyewitness accounts who said the courtyard was full of people at the time, and that there was more than one explosion.
Morning co-host Charlie Rose spoke yesterday with the head of Hamas, Khaled Mashal, in the Gulf state of Qatar. In the interview, Mashal claimed his group's war with Israel was based on neither ethnicity nor religion.
We are not fanatics, we are not fundamentalists, we do not actually fight the Jews because they are Jews per se. We do not fight any other races, we fight the occupiers. On the contrary, we actually respect the religious people. We ask for tolerance, for coexistence between the Buddhists, the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. As you know, God created us as nations. We are different, and the Quran says that in order for the nations to live together and coexist together without occupation and without any blockade.
I think I just heard you say, and this will close on this, you believe in the coexistence of peoples, and therefore you believe in the coexistence of Palestinians and Israelis in the Middle East.
I cannot coexist with occupation.
Without occupation, you can coexist.
I'm ready to coexist with the Jews, with the Christians, and with the Arabs and non-Arabs, and with those who agree with my ideas and those who disagree with them. However, I do not coexist with the occupiers, with the settlers, and those who...
It's one thing to say you want to coexist with the Jews. It's another thing you want to coexist with the state of Israel. Do you want to coexist with the state of Israel? Do you want to represent, do you want to recognize Israel as a Jewish state?
No. I said I do not want to live with a state of occupiers. I do coexist with other religions.
I'm assuming they're no longer occupiers. At that point, do you want to coexist and recognize their right to exist as they would recognize your right to exist
عندما تقوم الدولة الفلسطينية.
When we have a Palestinian state, then the Palestinian state will decide on its policies. You cannot actually ask me about the future. I answered you, but Palestinian people can have their say when they have their own state without occupation. In natural situations, they can decide the policies vis-a-vis others.
Thank you.
More fighting in eastern Ukraine is once again preventing outsiders from reaching the crash site of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17. Charlie D'Agata is in the region tonight. He joins us now. Charlie?
Jeff, this morning, 30 unarmed Dutch police tried to set off to the crash site. It was about a 4-hour drive, but they were turned back because of fierce fighting between pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian military. Some of the worst of the fighting seems to center around the crash site itself, which may be an indication that the Ukrainian military is trying to gain control and access to that area. About 200 bodies have been recovered so far, sent back to Holland, but there may be dozens that remain at the crash site itself. Now, the U.S. State Department released satellite images that they say shows heavy weapons, rockets that were fired from Russia into Ukraine. Furthermore, they say that these attacks happened after the downing of the Malaysia Airlines flight. European investigators say they're going to try once again tomorrow to try to gain access to this site, but there's been no let-up in the fighting, no indication that tomorrow is going to be any less dangerous than it's been today. Jeff?
Charlie D'Agata, thank you very much. Two men on a kayak were able to enter a restricted area at New York's JFK Airport, the second such incident in 2 years. Now, one police union is calling a multi-million-dollar security system there a failure. Vicente Arenas has more.
It was this kayak that Jordan Crooms and Anthony Giglio used to reach the shore near Kennedy International. Maintenance men found the two near an airport pier around 1:30 Saturday morning. Croom and Giglio say their kayak had overturned.
We were almost drowning. We were like, we couldn't hold on to the boat. And we were getting pulled under and out and all different ways. We even swirled a little bit.
The maintenance workers called police. It was in this area 2 years ago that a man whose jet ski ran out of gas climbed an 8-foot fence, crossed 2 active runways, and walked into the airport. He was never detected by the system's surveillance cameras and motion detectors. William Vorlacek is a counterterrorism consultant.
You've got a system that is supposed to provide detection, and what happened? Was the person detected? Did the system detect it? Did the system tell somebody?
A law enforcement source tells CBS News the kayakers were not close enough to set off the system's alarms or to cause concern among law enforcement. But in a statement to CBS News, the Port Authority's police union says the system is a failure, and the Port Authority's reluctance to provide adequate marine patrol and rescue services, along with its failed perimeter intrusion technology, is not in the flying public's best interest. In an email, the Port Authority told CBS News the kayakers did not breach the secure airfield. They were seeking help in a restricted water area and at a light pier. They were encountered quickly and provided help.
2 Americans working in Africa have tested positive for the Ebola virus. Both are part of a team fighting an outbreak in West Africa that's killed at least 672 people since February. Mark Albert has more on this.
Kent Brantley knew the danger, but when an Ebola outbreak hit Liberia earlier this year, the 33-year-old doctor from Indianapolis stayed to fight it, as did Nancy Reipel, a hygienist from Charlotte. The Ebola virus is highly contagious with close contact and is fatal in up to 90% of cases. There is no known cure. Doctors treating Ebola patients wear full protective gear, such as these synthetic suits and goggles. But Brantley still got infected, as did Reipel. Samaritan's Purse, a North Carolina aid group, is supporting the team. Vice President Ken Isaac says it is investigating how the two contracted the virus.
Dr. Brantley and Nancy are both in stable condition tonight. They have fevers, they have body aches and pains. They are not out of the woods yet. Our prayer is that they survive, and tonight they're in stable condition.
Isaac said Brantley and Ripple started showing symptoms a few days ago and immediately isolated themselves. A CDC test confirmed the diagnosis by Saturday, the same day a senior Liberian doctor died of Ebola. William Schaffner is an infectious disease expert at Vanderbilt University.
This is a very dangerous infection, and every medical person who takes care of these people understands that there's a risk, even if you are perfect in using all the gear.
Fears of the outbreak have prompted neighboring Nigeria to screen incoming airline passengers for symptoms of the illness.
The risk from casual contact from people who've come back from Africa is really zero. It is the fact that you have to have very intimate contact with people's bodily fluids that puts you at risk.
A group of doctors and nurses from Children's Surgery International in Minneapolis has now canceled its medical mission to Liberia to provide free surgeries for 200 kids. The group decided the danger is just too great.
No let up in a summer full of wildfires. 37 large-scale fires are currently burning in the western half of this country. Crews in California are battling a 4,000-acre wildfire east of Sacramento and 2 others at Yosemite National Park. Here's Terry Okita.
Flames drove close to homes and wineries in the Sierra foothills of Northern California, pushed by triple-digit temperatures and strong winds. There are 1,500 firefighters battling this one wildfire called the Sand Fire. It started after a car sparked dry vegetation and has already destroyed at least 10 homes. Over 1,000 residents have been evacuated. Todd Jensen isn't one of them. He says neighbors want him to be their eyes and ears.
Oh, jeez. Is their house still there? Are their animals still there? It's scary. You feel helpless. That's my, what can you do?
150 miles south in Yosemite National Park, it's boots on the ground and tankers and helicopters above. Hotshot crews are attacking a fire that's grown to 2,100 acres, destroyed one home, and forced the evacuation of a campground full of tourists during the height of the summer season. Investigators are still looking into what started the fire, but they know lightning caused a smaller, active one nearby. In the last 2 weeks, over 3,000 lightning strikes have hit Yosemite, causing spot fires. Most are small, smoldering, and die out themselves. But it's one more threat in a state already suffering from a historic drought, and now in the midst of a dangerous summer fire season with more hot, dry days in the forecast.
A group of thieves in Texas picked the wrong convenience store to target. They were trying to jump an employee in the parking lot as he carried money from the bank. They didn't know that the man's co-worker, seen here in gray, was a professional mixed martial arts fighter from Sri Lanka. One of the men was arrested, the others got away.
The Palestinian envoy to the United Nations has criticized the UN Security Council for not adopting a resolution on the Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip.
They should have adopted a resolution long time ago to condemn this aggression and to call for this aggression to be stopped immediately. We need to see fundamental changes of the life of our people in the Gaza Strip, in which the agreement on access and movement of 2005 to be put in place, where there will be movement of people in and outside Gaza, and also movement of goods in and outside Gaza. All these elements were not reflected in this statement, and we are disappointed in that sense, and we thought that a resolution should be in order.
Riyad Mansour said the 15-member council should have adopted a resolution on the carnage in Gaza a long time ago. He added that the status quo is not sustainable in a situation where 1.8 million Gazans are being treated inhumanely. Mansour spoke shortly after the UN Security Council adopted a statement calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. The Rwandan envoy, who's the current head of the council, read out the statement during the late-night emergency meeting on Sunday. The statement expressed concerns over the loss of human lives in Gaza and urged both Israel and the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas to accept and fully implement the humanitarian ceasefire into the Muslim aid period and beyond. It also called for the delivery of urgently needed assistance. Well, Israel keeps pounding the Gaza Strip. A short while ago, our correspondent said that Israeli shells struck the tiny coastal enclave with no immediate report of casualties. The fresh attack comes shortly after the UN Security Council adopted a statement calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. Several more Palestinians have lost their lives in Israel's air, ground, and naval raids since Sunday. A Palestinian woman was killed and her son seriously wounded after their house was targeted east of Gaza, and Israeli warplanes hit a medical center west of the coastal strip. The Palestinian death toll from Israel's 20-day onslaught now stands at 1,035, with more than 6,200 people injured. We're now joined by our correspondent Ashraf Shannon, who's with us from the ground in Gaza. Ashraf, tell us about the situation of the ceasefire, and at this point, how is it holding up?
Well, about 20 to 25 minutes after the UN Security Council meeting, Israeli tanks fired at least a dozen shells towards Shijaiya neighborhood east of Gaza. It's the same neighborhood that Israeli forces massacred dozens of people there. At the same time, Israeli gunboats fired shells along the northern part of Gaza Beach near off Beth Lahia and off areas north of Gaza City. Also, an Israeli drone fired a rocket towards the border area east of Rafah. Now, we still don't know whether there were casualties or not. We're still waiting for reports from the Ministry of Health. We tried to contact them, but they've been really busy in the last days. The phones, they're unable to get to their phones because of the situation they're having in Gaza Hospital due to lack of medicines and hospital supplies, and dealing with the thousands of injuries. But we're still waiting for reports from the Ministry of Health in the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Ashraf, one of the main issues put forth by Hamas with regards to a ceasefire was that Israeli forces that were occupying certain parts of the Gaza Strip had to evacuate. Is there any sign of those Israeli forces leaving Gaza at this point?
Definitely not. Israeli forces are still there. Israeli special forces are trying to go deeper into the Gaza Strip. They've been confronted by Hamas fighters and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters and other resistance fighters throughout the night and up to this morning. There are clashes there, and neither side has reported any casualties so far.
Ashraf, we're seeing images of various neighborhoods. They've literally been destroyed and brought to rubble. Please tell us about the level and scope of death and destruction that has been inflicted upon the Palestinians.
The level of destruction in Gaza's Shijaiya neighborhood, the town of Beth Hanun in northern Gaza, and Khuza'a in east of the southern Gaza Strip of Khan Yunis, is beyond description. I've never seen anything like this in my life. During the 2008 war, there was massive destruction. During 2012, there was a lot of destruction. But this time, it's unbelievable. When you go there, you will not be able, if you live there for 50 years, you will not be able to recognize your neighborhood. This is how bad it is.
Elsewhere, Palestinian fighters have fired a barrage of rockets deep into Israel in retaliation for the deadly Israeli onslaught on the besieged Gaza Strip. The military wing of Hamas, the Qassam brigades, fired over 100 rockets at an Israeli military base in Kisafim, south of Gaza Strip. Several Israeli cities were also targeted by Hamas rockets on Sunday. Meanwhile, an Israeli soldier was injured by a bomb in Gaza earlier. A shell fired from the territory killed at least one Israeli soldier. The Israeli army says that 43 soldiers have died since July the 8th. It's the highest number of Israeli military fatalities in years. Palestinian fighters have disputed the number, though, saying the fatalities are much higher. Pope Francis has urged countries currently embroiled in conflict to find the necessary strength and wisdom to embrace peace. He made a direct appeal for fighting in the Middle East to end.
Mai la guerra.
Never more war. Never more war. I think especially about those children who had the hope of a future, dignified life, but had it taken away. Dead children, wounded children, children who play with toys made out of the remains of weapons, children who cannot smile anymore. Stop, please. I beg you with all my heart. It is time to stop. Stop, please. Today, my thoughts go out in particular to the Middle East, Iraq and Ukraine.
Well, the pontiff made the plea on the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War. He told pilgrims and tourists in Vatican City's St. Peter's Square that, quote, everything is lost with war. The Pope also urged people not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Clashes have erupted between Israeli troops and Palestinians following Eid al-Fitr prayers in the occupied West Bank. The street battles are reported from Zaif Pita, south of Hebron al-Khalil, as well as the area near Israel's Ofer prison. Israeli troops have also fired live rounds at Palestinian protesters, wounding at least 3 of them. 3 others have also been arrested. For more, we're now joined by our correspondent, Nell Burden, who's with us from Ramallah. Nell?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in the West Bank, first of all, there was a very somber atmosphere as we came into the holy state of the month of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, to mark the end of the fasting of Ramadan. Now, people were referring to Gaza as actually Eid al-Shahid, which is the month of, the holiday of the dead. So clearly people have, there's a huge response to what's taking place in Gaza. Now, when there was news that the Israelis would not adhere to any humanitarian ceasefire for Eid, there were small rallies that erupted throughout the West Bank and Jerusalem. Now, as people entered Al-Aqsa Mosque on Friday, these became more fierce, and actually hundreds of people got involved in a protest just by Al-Aqsa Mosque and Bab al-Ammud, which is the Damascus Gate, the entrance into the Muslim quarter. The Israelis immediately blocked off both entrances, and the police began firing rubber bullets and sound bombs at the protesters, so quite a few were injured. There were also demonstrations taking place in Beit Hanina and Shafat refugee camp, which is where Mohammed Abu Khader was killed, the 15-year-old boy who was burnt alive. So clashes immediately erupted then throughout the evening. There were helicopters above, and the Israelis obviously used very punitive measures against those and arrested 3. The same took place in throughout Hebron, in particular in the Old City, as people attempted to go for the evening prayers in a mosque which is just in the centre between a settlement and the city centre, and police actually restricted Palestinians from praying in their own mosque, so a large demonstration also erupted there. They also took place along the border, which is along the Israeli wall, and stretched down to Bethlehem and all the way down to Ramallah. So people are clearly responding, and they're very angry to not only the fact that so many people have been killed, but the fact that the Israelis refused to cease their firing on the holiest day of the month and would not allow people a humanitarian break just to have one day for Eid al-Fitr.
1919 would be the year that sparked China's Renaissance. The year is not only remembered for its student activism, but most importantly, the yearning of a young generation for new culture. Luo Zhanglong, then 23, took part in the May the 4th movement and was among the earliest to embrace the ideals of Marxism. His son Luo Pinghai remembers how his father staunchly held to new ideals of the time.
My father and other students were outraged at the prospect that the Chinese territories would be taken over by the Japanese. They felt that the Chinese old tradition, which stressed hierarchy and obedience, was partly to blame. So they were pushing for a new culture that would enable China to stand on its feet.
Science and democracy became the buzzword of the day. Its appeal and promise of creating a modern society helped students secure their first victory against imperialism and feudalism. Luo Longzhang was one of the earliest members of the Communist Party of China. He went on to lead several movements in the revolutionary era and was later elected to the CPC Central Committee. 95 years ago, thousands of students took to the street of Beijing to begin what is considered a new era in Chinese history. Its core value of patriotism, science, and experimentation have been passed down through generations and continue to influence societal concepts in China today. Luo Pinghai followed in his father's footsteps. He compiled several books based on his father's thesis and delved into the era while he worked at the then Revolutionary Museum, which is now known as the National Museum of China. Peering through the old exhibits, Luo is amazed at the tremendous changes over the past 9 decades. In carrying out the spirit of the May the 4th movement, Luo believes that the country still needs to continue strengthening its cultural values.
The two symbols, democracy and science, can still relate to Chinese society today. Without science, there will be no real strength. And China has come a long way since 1919, but building a democratic system is a long-term mission, and on this, the country still has a long way to go.
Luo Pinghai is over 80 years old now. He hopes that the value of the May the 4th movement will continue to be passed down and enrich future generations.
We close tonight with a story from Barry Peterson. Barry's been covering the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas from inside Gaza for the last week. This is a bit of what he's seen.
The first thing you notice are the kids, even around me, standing there at the back. They smile and say their one English word, hello. And then, after an attack, the first thing you notice are the kids. They don't know when to duck or where to run. But kids learn fast. Katin Abu El Qas's granddaughter Doreen is 1.5 years old, too young to know her alphabet, but she has learned what to do when the shelling starts. Sometimes before shelling, the Israelis pepper the area with white smoke to warn what is coming. And other times, the strikes land without warning. So jangled nerves have made me hyper-vigilant, like hitting the ground when a rocket was fired out. My guide in telling people's stories here is Palestinian journalist Marwan Al-Ghul. Now he is the story, showing us pictures of his beloved pink house on a farm near the Israeli border. When he went to check it yesterday, it was gone, a shell hole in the ground.
During the last night, all of the night, me and my wife was asking why.
In the last 2 weeks in Gaza, there have been many here, like the Al-Ghul family. When the Israelis do this to you or to other people in Gaza, what does it do to you? What does it do to your anger?
These civilian people who become homeless, they become more aggressive to the Israeli. It's not good for peace.
Can people forgive after something like this? Can you forgive?
No.
Gone too, the home of his sister. But in truth, there has been much suffering on both sides, leaving you to worry that there may not be room left for reconciliation at the end of this war, only anger that may feed another one.